Welcome back to Squawk Box, live from Jerusalem on this, the 60th anniversary of Israel's independence. We're talking some stock picks about Israel today, given the fact that the economy is doing fairly well. The level of unemployment in this country, the lowest since the early 1970s. Zach Miller, Aaron Katzman are both with IsraelNewsletter.com. They're joining me here just outside of the Old City in Jerusalem. And Cliff Goldstein's with Amidex. He joins us this morning from Philadelphia. Guys, great to have you on the program. Thanks for being with us. The names people know in the U.S. when it comes to Israeli companies are almost always something to do with software. What is it with software, and some of the names that you like, what do those companies have in common?
I think all these technologies have been developed through military and battlefield-tested environments. And so some of these types of technologies, the type of technologies like a checkpoint, have been tested through that environment and been introduced now for civilian consumer-type uses.
Aaron, Converse is a name people know, but Nice Systems, Amdocs, Alvarion, talk about them.
Alvarion is a hot play in WiMAX, right?
Sort of broadband souped up.
Right, exactly. They're growing about 30% a year. They have over 250 installations. They're really hot in the developing world. WiMAX rollouts in the U.S. are sort of on again, off again because of Sprint, but we think because of the rumored Deutsche Telekom move into Sprint, that'll give a little bit of financial backing and help Alvarion and the whole WiMAX movement move forward.
Cliff, you make the point that it's not easy for Americans to trade some of the Tel Aviv-listed stocks. How, is it getting easier? How is it getting easier? And are you bullish or not on Tel Aviv?
Absolutely bullish. Tel Aviv has been a truly undiscovered miracle the last 10 years. The Tel Aviv Stock Exchange is up about 200% over the last 5 years. The problem really has been access. How do Americans invest in that market? And more methods are becoming available to Americans. Of course, you've got a lot of Israeli stocks traded in New York, but you also have some tremendous Israeli stocks that trade exclusively in Tel Aviv. The bridge will be companies like Amidex that provides a joint index between Israeli-traded Israelis and New York-traded Israelis. We hope to see some ETFs coming to market, and I think pretty soon Americans will be able to trade directly, buy and sell Israeli stocks on the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange.
Yeah. How would you rate Israel as a global market vis-a-vis some emerging markets, Europe, and even how the U.S. exchanges are doing at this point?
I've heard people say that Israel's the only emerging market that ever emerged, which may be true. It seems like the hallmark of an emerging market is it goes nowhere. The Israeli market has absolutely been performing in biblical proportions. We're really seeing no inflation, high GDP growth, tremendous growth in internal wealth. Israel now has 11 billionaires. You don't usually think about billionaires when you think about Israel. Tremendous internal growth and tremendous export growth. You put it all together and the stock exchange is soaring. I'm very bullish. I think we're still seeing the infancy of Israel's arrival on the international scene.
Interesting. Zach, some of the names, not every name is universally loved here. You got some Radware, Nestec that you're not so hot on. Where are the vulnerabilities when you're surveying the landscape?
We think Nest Technologies actually is going to see some trouble in the next couple of years. Just like India has its fair share of offshoring companies, Nest Technology is Israel's offshoring company. We are seeing sort of some of that offshore business come in bits and pieces now away from Israel and starting to be repatriated back to the U.S.
Yeah. In the U.S., the problems center mostly around housing, as you know, around credit, on concerns of the consumer, concerns that CapEx is going to be falling. Thank God for the dollar is sort of the attitude back home. How do those things play here? Is housing anywhere, is credit anywhere near the concern it is back in the States?
It really hasn't been until now. The only thing that really is affected is smaller Israeli companies, which are public. They've had some problems with their cash management. They put a lot of their available liquid money into CDOs and the like, or ours, and they got burned on that. But for the bigger companies, we really don't see any effect. Maybe a slight slowdown in real estate, but that's about it. Things are looking pretty good here.
One of the things we found in the week that we've been here is that green tech maybe, I don't know, maybe you agree or not, that it may be the next big wave, the way telecom and wireless was in past decades. Is that true? And is it because oil is at the levels it's at?
I'd agree with that. I think a lot of the publicly traded companies that we're seeing at IsraelNewsletter.com have been venture capital funding companies that are now public and actually hitting their stride. We're seeing the new monies raised now going towards green tech, and we think that those will be the future publicly traded companies.
What specifically? Desalination, electric cars?
That's the biggest one, desalination and use of saving of water, right? Israel started drip irrigation, and that's going into Africa and places like that where they just don't, there's, like Israel, right? We weren't blessed with a lot of natural resources, so we've done whatever we could to squeeze whatever we can out of these rocks. players that are...
And now you got big players like the GEs of the world, the Siemens trying to get in. Is the hope that local companies will get bought, or are they going to be facing rivals who have incredible economies of scale?
I think at this point we're looking at early stage venture capital raises, and these companies are looking to make exits in the next few years.
Cliff, can you be any more specific other than indexes? If someone is interested in trading, what areas should they look to?
Well, I'd look at chemicals, I'd look at retail, construction, banking, the traditional industries. The high-tech stuff is very exciting, but ironically, the stability and the growth has been in the traditional industries, in Israel's blue chips, so to speak. I'd look at companies like Israel Chemicals and Israel Corporation, and I would look at the banks. It's amazing to see the contrast between Israeli banks and American banks and how they've fared over the last few years, Israel having virtually no exposure to the subprime disaster.
Interesting stuff. Cliff, thank you for joining us. Also, thanks to Aaron forgive me, Aaron and Zach joining us here back on set in Jerusalem. Beck, you heard him say it, the only emerging market that's ever emerged, and there's a long history of companies that have obviously made it a long, long way.
Companies we watch very closely right here in the U.S. as well. Carl, thank you very much.